This is Miss Finn from the Literacy Lab. Today we are going to be reading Grandma Gatewood Hikes the Appalachian Trail by Jennifer Thermes. Between 11 children, the clothes to wash, the cow to milk, the garden to tend, the occasional tramp passing through to feed, and one husband, Emma Gatewood rarely got a break. But sometimes she found a way to escape. A long ramble through the hills behind the farm was all Emma needed to set her heart right again. In the spring of 1955, when Emma was 67 years old and her children had all grown up, she left her home in Ohio and set out to walk the Appalachian Trail. Called the longest footpath in the world, the trail stretched along the mountain tops from Georgia to Maine. Emma had read about it in a magazine. The magazine said no woman had ever hiked the entire length, and that it was easy. Besides, it was what she wanted to do. Emma didn't tell her family where she was going, but no one worried. After years of hard work on the farm, they knew that Emma could take care of herself. The Appalachian Trail is about 2,190 miles long and passes through 14 states. It follows the chain of mountains known as the Appalachian Mountains, which are over 480 million years old. It takes about 5 million steps to walk the entire trail. This is Emma's route through Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee. She started walking in Georgia on May 3rd, 1955, walked through Georgia, and on May 14th crossed into North Carolina and walked all the way past the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee and kept walking north up into Virginia. Emma wore canvas sneakers and carried a homemade sack packed lightly. She ate berries from the side of the trail and drank from cold mountain springs. She rested under trees and on top of rocks warmed by a fire. Some nights, the sky was so big and dark that Emma was afraid to sleep. Other nights, she curled up on a soft bed of leaves with plenty of mice to keep her company. Emma hoped to avoid meeting a bear, but she did once and chased him off by hollering as loud as she could. The trail ran over hills, across streams, alongside roads, and through small towns. At times, the woods felt like a long green tunnel. Sometimes Emma lost her way, but even without a map, she always found it back again. Some mountain farmers didn't know what to make of Emma, with her hair like a wild woman after days and nights on the trail, but most gave her supper and a cozy place to sleep. She often found the kindliest welcome from the poorest of families. Word traveled as she wound her way north, and Emma soon became known as Grandma Gatewood. Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, is headquarters of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. For this reason, it is called the psychological midpoint of the trail. Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, is way up here along the Potomac River. Our school, Ferdinand T. Day, is up here by Washington, D.C. and the Potomac River. Emma's path took her north through Virginia, past the Blue Ridge Mountains on June 9th, and she continued walking up to Shenandoah National Park, and in July crossed into Maryland. Emma scrambled up and down steep hills carved by glaciers that had melted millions of years ago. The trail wasn't quite as easy as that magazine article had said. For some fool reason, they always lead you right up the biggest rock to the top of the biggest mountain they can find, said Emma. The weather turned from brisk and windy to hot and sticky and buggy to soaking wet to sunny, sometimes within a few hours. But Emma kept walking. Some days were rather dull. Other days, the views went on forever. Pennsylvania is known as the state where boots go to die. Part of the trail is covered with sharp rocks that are hard to walk on, called Felsenmeer, which means sea of rock in German. Emma walked through Pennsylvania, and on July 9th, she reached Pine Grove Furnace State Park, which is the halfway point of the trail. She continued on and crossed the Susquehanna River and walked through the Lehigh Gap and continued and crossed the Delaware River. And then on July 28th, she crossed into New York and continued on northward. She walked through Clarence Fonstalk Memorial State Park, which is the oldest section of the Appalachian Trail. Rocks tore the soles of Emma's shoes, so she held them together with tape. She tried wearing a pair of men's leather boots, but they were big and clunky and slowed her down. Emma chatted with everyone she met along the way, and when the newspapers heard about her big adventure, reporters met her at almost every stop. Soon it seemed as if the whole country was curious about why an old lady would want to walk all that way by herself. Emma answered, "Just for the heck of it," and she kept walking. By late summer, Emma was over halfway done with the trail. She had no idea that a huge hurricane was racing up the East Coast. This is Emma's route through Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Vermont. And on August 1st, she crossed into Connecticut and walked north up to Massachusetts and continued on. And on August 11th, crossed into Vermont and walked past many mountains. And on August 20th, continued on through New Hampshire. The storm hit hard. Rain soaked the land and rivers washed away homes. Trees cracked in the wind, smashing to the ground. Emma didn't hear news of how much damage had been done since she was deep in the forest. For her, it was just another day of foul weather. She slipped on a ledge and twisted her knee, but kept slogging through the wet mud. She tried to cross a rain-swollen stream, but it was flowing too fast, and Emma couldn't swim. Emma was tired. She found a crowded shelter with a group of teenage boys from the city. The hut was tiny and damp, but Emma enjoyed their company, and they liked hearing her stories. The next day, they carried her across the stream. She was on her way again. Emma clung to two young men hiking together across the swift-flowing gorge. She traveled a ways with a troop of Boy Scouts. She was even invited to tea by a note that someone had pinned to a tree. All along the trail, people helped Emma, but after a while, she was glad to be alone again. The second fastest on-land wind speed ever recorded in 1934 on Mount Washington at 231 miles per hour. It broke the record books and the anemometer used to measure the wind. Emma walked through New Hampshire, past many mountains, and on September 3rd she crossed into Maine and continued on and crossed the Kennebec River and walked through the 100-mile wilderness all the way to Mount Katahdin, the northern terminus of the trail. On September 25th, 1955, Emma finished her hike. As Emma traveled farther north, the pine trees smelled like coming winter. She balanced on mountain tops, scared the wind might blow her off, but she kept walking. By now, she had almost reached the end of her journey. Park rangers ferried her across a wide river. Just one more mountain to climb. Emma wore every piece of clothing she carried, plus a coat someone had left behind on the trail. Her last pair of shoes was in tatters. It was bitterly cold. She could barely see through the thick fog, and the eyeglasses she had cracked in a fall. Her knees ached and her ankle was sprained, but Emma climbed, crawled, and pulled her way up the mountain until at last she reached the top. Emma sang a verse from America the Beautiful as loud as she could. She had set out to hike the entire trail by herself, and she did. Less than 2 years later, Emma would do it again. I wanted to see some of the things I missed the first time, said Emma. The end. I hope you enjoyed our story about Emma's journey across the Appalachian Trail. Thanks for reading with me.